Welcome, listeners, to Embracing Power and Potential, your go-to podcast where we travel through the realms of personal growth, mindset mastery, and fear-conquering strategies to help achieve your greatest desires. I'm your host, Portia, and I'm thrilled to be your guide on this transformative experience. If you're ready to unleash your authentic power and elevate your life, you're in the right place. Join me and our special guests as we embark on conversations that will broaden your horizons and enrich your journey. So, sit back and immerse yourself in these unmatched discussions. It's time to expand your mind and your life. Hello, my loves, and welcome back to an episode of Embracing Power and Potential. I am very excited to be recording this episode today because it is a topic that I love to talk about because it's something that we all avoid. And this is our shadow self, our unconscious beliefs and the parts of us that we try and hide. But not today. I'm going to explain why these parts of you actually make you whole and how we can integrate every part of us as humans and accept every part of ourselves. This is where real transformation happens. This is going to be one of those conversations that changes the way that you see yourself, not by adding more, but by revealing what's already there. We're talking about the parts of you that don't make it onto your vision boards or onto your Instagram highlights. This is the parts of you that you outrun, that you hide or try to fix. The parts that you've been taught to feel ashamed of. This is your shadow self. This is your unconscious patterns and the beliefs that you never consciously choose, but you've been living by them all your life and you may not even know it. Most of us think that when making decisions, we are making decisions from our best self. And that would be nice, but the truth is, a lot of our life is run by the version of us that we avoid the most. This is our unconscious self. This is our unintegrated parts of ourselves and the younger versions of ourselves. The reactive parts of ourselves. The unspoken fears. The traits that we learned were either too much or not enough or unacceptable. So today, we're going to bring all of that into the light. Not to judge ourselves, but to understand ourselves and actually learn to embrace these parts of ourselves that we may not really like, but we're going to learn to love them today. Because you're not ever going to evolve just by pretending to only be light, to only be happy, and because you're going to come across as fake. You evolve by learning how to hold your light and your shadows at the same time. This is how you are authentic and embracing all parts of yourself. So I'm going to break down what the shadow actually is and how our unconscious beliefs quietly shape your life. They shape your behavior and why the traits you reject in yourself are usually the ones trying to protect you. Even though they may be holding you back and keeping you small, unconsciously, this is yourself protecting. We're going to dive into this episode. This is a lot of work that I actually do with my mindset coaching clients. We dive into, limiting beliefs and the parts of ourselves that we avoid out of fear. But when we actually learn to integrate them, that's when we have the biggest breakthroughs and transformations. It's where we break through fears and change our stories and change our beliefs. So what actually is the shadow self? The shadow self is our emotional, behavioral identity patterns that we don't really like in ourselves. And these are usually formed in childhood through moments where you learn that certain traits of yours were unsafe or unacceptable. And these parts of ourselves, they don't disappear. Have you ever had a memory of you feeling embarrassed in primary school or, in early years of your life? Maybe you got up on stage and spoke and, choked, or something happened that made you feel shame, embarrassed. So you have never brought that side of yourself out again. And this is our shadow self protecting us from feeling the feelings of shame and embarrassment. So instead, our true self, our authentic nature that wanted to speak on stage, doesn't disappear, but goes underground and then expresses. So those light parts of you are shut down, but then express themselves through reactions and fears, triggers, and self-sabotage. Or another example, maybe you avoid conflict because you learn that anger equals unsafety. Maybe when you were growing up, you were in an environment where there were big blow-ups, and if you did speak your mind, there would be big fights or arguments. So unconsciously, you learned that not speaking up and avoiding conflict is what keeps you safe. So you will have unspoken boundaries that you will have. You will maybe be a people pleaser to avoid conflict, because this is a protective mechanism that keeps you safe. This is why it is important to integrate these parts of ourselves, the shadow selves, because it is there for a reason. They have formed from experiences in our lives that have happened, and they have kept us safe. But as we evolve and as we, grow into adulthood and learn to live for ourselves, and our environments change from when we were young or evolving as people, integrating these parts of ourselves and thanking them for how they served us at those times. But now knowing that we can create new stories, new beliefs, new ways to be safe in our life. Because we are literally running on 95% of the time with our subconscious mind. That is fact. 5% of the time we are using our conscious minds. That is not much. Our subconscious runs the show. This is our subconscious thoughts that we don't even know that we're having. We have 60,000 thoughts a day. There's no way we can be aware of all of them, because who we are is unconscious. It is inherited. But your shadow self, it's not bad. It's just unseen. So what you suppress, those emotions, those fears, those experiences that have shaped you or, drawn you in and make you less spoken, it's what controls you. So we want to be able to integrate all of them, and this is how we become whole. Most of our limiting beliefs are unconscious. You don't think them. This is the thing. You actually feel them, because even though those beliefs are running subconsciously in our minds, we're not always actually aware that they're even happening, but they are running the show, and they are still controlling how we show up and how we feel. As an example that I struggle with is a subconscious belief that if I rest, I'm lazy. So unconsciously, I am always trying to be productive, even when I'm exhausted and burning myself out, because I'm scared to do nothing because I don't want to feel lazy. But I have to remind myself and be conscious when I am feeling tired and trying to be productive, that rest is productive, and reminding myself that it is okay to rest, because my conditioning from my childhood, my nana says, you don't lay on the couch in the day, you're lazy. So that's what I've believed. But I fucking work my ass off. I work on myself all the time. I do show up as my best version of myself. So I'm learning to be gentle and to integrate the part that is anxious when I rest, because I feel like guilty for it. That's just an example. Another example that can show up, especially in your relationships, is if I express my needs, I'll be abandoned. If you say how you really feel, and say if something in your relationship isn't working, maybe your partner isn't showing up for you the way that you need them to, they're not meeting your primary needs, but you're worried that if you do speak up, you'll either be rejected or they would leave. So you'll feel abandoned. So this is your unconscious, your shadow self, keeping yourself small and unspoken. And the more that you do this, the more that you don't speak up for yourself, the more that your shadow does run the show, and you feel less and less and less confident to speak your needs. But the same is the paradox. This is practice, and working with your shadow self takes consistency and practice, and it's definitely not easy. But it's how you grow as a person, and learning to speak up with little things in your relationships, setting boundaries within your family or friends. This is how you bring your power back to yourself, and how you start practicing to actually integrate all parts of you. And then this will show other people what you will accept as your standards. You won't be able to be walked all over anymore, because you will feel confident to actually speak up about your needs. And that's the beauty of being human. There's such a paradox. You can be confident and be insecure at the same time. You can grow and still fall into old patterns, because we are all on a journey, and I know that I do. We are human. We are on a human experience, and we are learning and evolving every single day, and we're gonna fuck up, and that's okay. That's how we learn to do better next time. Because if we were so perfect all the time, there would be nothing to learn and we'd be pretty bland and boring. So taking in every part of our experience, every part of ourselves, working with your subconscious beliefs and sub experiences that have happened way back in your childhood up to your early adult years, and finding the parts of you that you do hide, that you do avoid, so you can become aware of them and start integrating them and actually using them in your favor. If you can actually, instead of avoiding conflict in your relationships, but use them conflicts in a healthy way and be able to conversate them and express your needs without it blowing up. This is how you create emotional maturity for yourself and for the people that you have relationships with, to show them that there is power in the things and the conversations that we avoid. Because real transformation comes when you stop fighting the parts of you that feel wrong and you actually start to integrate them. So, to finish this episode today, I've actually brainstormed a few points of how you can practice to work with your shadow self. And I've got some actionable steps that will help you and that you can try. So firstly, noticing your triggers. When you are feeling triggered, like, when someone says something to you and you see heart starts pounding and you're feeling like, wow, like, look at that and become curious and think, I'm so triggered right now. Why? And ask yourself, what part of myself do I dislike when this comes up? Is it because you become reactive? What is it? Why are you feeling triggered? And what parts of you don't you like about yourself when you feel like this? Then I want you to trace the pattern backward. Where did you learn this reaction? Do your parents react like that? How unconsciously have you learned to show up like that? Or if it's something that you are avoiding, not reacting, but if you want to speak up, who taught me that this behavior was unsafe or unacceptable? And then this interesting point that I'm going to show you how to do is give your shadow self a voice. Have a conversation between yourself and your shadow self. Ask yourself, what are you trying to protect me from right now? And if it helps, journal this down. What do you need? Do you need safety, love? Do you need acceptance? And then what are you afraid will happen? Are you afraid of scarcity, shame, guilt? What are the feelings that you're avoiding? And remember that your shadow self is emotional, not intellectual. So actually allowing yourself to sit in these feelings, to feel the emotions, because shadow work is somatic. You feel it. You don't think about it. You let your body and your mind work together to come through, to express yourself in your truest form. I love shadow work, and I have done a lot of shadow work for myself, especially around my childhood experiences and abandonment wounds and expectations of my parents that have never been lived up to. And I love my parents, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with the way I was raised or the morals that I have in my life, and I'm grateful for the life that I've lived. But everyone has had an experience, and it's about really uncovering the feelings and the triggers that have come from these experiences and learning to integrate them to become your whole self. I wouldn't be able to do this work that I do now, recording a podcast, posting myself online and talking like the way that I do, if I hadn't done this shadow work and worked through parts of myself that I'm avoided with embarrassment and shame and fear of failure. And we want to remember that we have to be compassionate to our shadow self. Remember, our shadow self, it is what has protected us. I like to say the shadow self is sort of like your ego self. And instead of trying to change or fix, the darker parts of ourselves, it's about understanding it, understanding why it shows up and how we can move through that with grace instead of reacting or not doing anything out of fear, working with all parts of ourselves to create this beautiful human experience that, I'm learning on my journey, and then I hope that you will too. When you start integrating all parts of yourself, this is when you create emotional honesty and acceptance of your own contradictions within all parts of yourself. You're growing as a new person, but you still have old parts of yourself, so it's learning to balance them and being compassionate and gentle with yourself on your journey. Letting go of perfectionism, note to self, and allowing yourself to be seen in your truth. Allowing yourself to be authentic, to be your beautiful self, to be weird. That's one thing. I'm just going to share a personal experience. My ex-boyfriend used to say that I was weird because, I started to do all of this sort of work, and I was reading tarot cards and meditating and actually becoming the healthiest version of myself. But he wasn't used to this, and he wasn't able to sort of bring me down because I started to find my power finally. And he would say that I was weird. So for some reason, that's something that I really took with me. That stuck with me for some reason. And then not long ago, just in these last couple of months, I had someone else call me weird. And oh my goodness, the feelings that I felt in my body, the triggers, my stomach was turning, and I could literally feel tears filling in my eyes from being called weird. And, I send so much love to that version of myself who didn't feel like that I could show up as my full self because I was scared of being judged by my own boyfriend. But this person who called me weird, I actually ended up, having a conversation and saying, look, it's not you, it's me. I'm not sure why, but I was so triggered by that. And they said their response was so healing. And, I definitely did a lot of work around this myself and accepted the weird parts of myself. But they responded and said, that's why I like you, and that's why you're unique, and because you are weird, because you're not afraid to be different. So now I have a whole new perspective on being weird, and I embrace it. I love that part of myself because I wouldn't be me if I was not doing the things that make up my whole authentic self. So this is just your reminder to not bypass or suppress the quote unquote ugly parts of yourself. Because when we embrace and when we accept all parts of ourselves, we create more confidence, better relationships, less shame around failure and trying new things. We create more self-trust, more internal peace, and a clearer identity overall because you're not afraid to be who you truly are. And I think that is such a beautiful thing. You don't grow by becoming a better version of yourself. You grow by becoming a truer version of yourself. The real power is not in the light that you show to the world, but it's in your shadows that you're willing to face with openness. I love you so much, and I want you to tell yourself today that you love all parts of you, even the ones that you think that you don't like right now. Please let me know in the DMs if you do try, shadow work or any of the points that I touched on, because I love hearing all of your stories. And if you could rate the podcast 5 stars, we would always appreciate that. I love our growing community, our growing family. And yeah, I felt good recording that today. I loved that episode. I love talking about becoming your favorite version of yourself. And that's by being authentically, fully you. So go and do that. I love you so much, and we'll speak in the next episode. Bye.